So I know you guys are probably wondering, what is this Cultivated Conversation series? Well, Cultivated Conversations is exactly what it sounds like. It's just some really honest God conversations, but real conversations. And so addressing some things that you might not normally hear from the pulpit or the stage, or addressing some things that you might not normally hear talked about in the church. And even at some point, subjects that might have been considered taboo. We want to talk about it because we need to talk about it. Let's face it, right? And so Cultivated Conversations is all about having those real God conversations. What then does it look like for, let's say, I have a friend or a family member, and I'm super excited about whatever holiday tradition. Maybe I'm excited to go pick out a Christmas tree or something, and I'm inviting them to go, and they're kind of dismissive, a little distant, but they're really not into it. So what are some things that I then can do as opposed to trying to drag them into it? Come on, you're such a, I want to, it's tradition. And what are some things then that I can do to be mindful, just demonstrating some mindfulness about what's going on with them?
Yeah, I would say first, just being an active listener. Initially when someone says they don't want to, really finding out and listening to the reason why they don't want to participate. Because it could be a physical issue. Maybe their leg's hurting. Maybe they've been in pain, and when you're in pain, you just don't feel like it. Or maybe it really is holiday blues. And so hearing where they're at, and then I think working through with them other ways that they could participate with you that might be outside of getting a tree, but that you can still incorporate them so that they feel a part as well. So just trying to hear their heart and where they're at, and what they're comfortable at doing at that particular time. So maybe it's not going out to get a tree, but maybe once the tree's there, they don't mind coming over and helping decorate.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So just being open-minded, that maybe that particular activity is not going to work for a person. Hearing why it's not going to work is going to help you to think about other ways that you can incorporate them in family or friend activities.
Yeah.
And I would agree. And, just to add, I think sometimes people don't take the time to think, through what people like doing. If you've known someone for 10, 15, 20 years, sometimes you just got to pull back and think about this person, you know what I mean? And sometimes we try to drag them in what we want to do, but really don't take time to think about what they enjoy doing and maybe inviting them to something that they enjoy, And so, and I find that's the struggle sometimes, when it's dealing with holiday blues. People are inviting you to stuff that you really don't want to do, or you might be okay with it, but don't really think about the person. You know what I mean? People do it with gifts. You know what I mean? They'll buy, you can have a really, really nice gift, but that's not them. You know what I mean? And oftentimes people feel left out because the thought is not put into it. Yeah. The activities, what people are doing, or the gifts, you know what I mean? And so sometimes people just really don't feel like, I don't matter. Yeah. But I think sometimes if we really think about the person and present something that they may enjoy, may, spark something.
Yeah. And I think, though, that's just really good relational advice in general, right? In any relationship, whether that's a family relationship, a significant other relationship, whatever that looks like, you can't only do things you want to do. Because relationship don't work that way. If we're only ever doing what you want to do, at some point, I am going to throw in my ticket and say, you can do what you want to do by yourself. Right. I'm going to be over here. And so just in general, that's good relational advice, right? Is, thinking from other people's standpoints. I kind of laugh with some of my friends because a couple of us share introversion. We're all introverts. Now, of course, there are, some of my friends who are extroverts then. And so I always feel super validated when one of my extroverted friends recognize oh, that's you probably, and I'm like, you're exactly right. And so, you know, maybe they're super excited about going here or going to like, and I kind of jokingly say this, but kind of really, um, shopping malls are a torture chamber for me. Like, I want no parts of it. If I'm going to a mall, I am going directly where I want to go, and then I'm leaving. There's no need to walk around.
Like, it doesn't excite me at all.
I know. and so that's just the way that I am. Like big parties and all, like that's not exactly my thing. And so my friends have taken the time to know me well enough to know that to invite Anj to, you know what I mean, a party with a bunch of like my you know, friends or X, Y, and Z, like one, they might want to expose me to their friends, but then they also recognize that's not necessarily something that she likes, you know what I mean? And so perhaps they find a different way to expose me to their friends, or in small doses. They're like, hey, we'll show up and then we'll go and do something else. And so I always feel validated when my friends, like before, like without even having to ask anything, like they'll recognize, okay, she needs time to recharge. Because that's right, the key for an introvert is that it's not that we don't like people. It's really not that we don't like y'all, okay? We normally like smaller doses of y'all. No, but really it's not that we don't like people, it's that we get re-energized in our own space when we have time to ourselves to really, you know, recenter ourselves. And so recognizing that there are some people just in general, right, that these are things that they like to do or these are things that they don't like to do. But then what do I do if I recognize a shift in a friend? So normally they're up for this, but I recognize now in this holiday season, like consistently, I'm like, hey, you want to do such and such, and these are things that we do regularly, and they're really not interested in engaging. What, you know, are there some things then that I can do to kind of figure out where they are, and or to help, to be an ally in some way?
I was going to say that when you were saying your friends know you really well, I was thinking, so what if you had a drastic shift in how you operated and how would people respond to that? And so that's a good point. And I think one being they should know you so they can determine the difference. But when you do see a difference, I think there has to be a conversation around it. And sometimes we shy away from critical conversations. We're like, I'm gonna leave her or I'm gonna leave him be. And sometimes people are, especially your strong friends, because the strong friends are always reaching out and being the rescue to many others, but a lot of people forget about your strong friends. So don't forget about those that you always are able to get in contact with when you're struggling, but think about those people that are strong usually and they're presenting in a different way. I think it's very important to talk to them because strong people aren't used to people asking them questions. So they most of the time don't even know how to respond. But I think if you gave them the opportunity to say, hey, usually you're up for this, what's going on? And that will let them know that somebody cares, somebody's listening. And so even if I'm not physically able to do these things, I'm glad that you recognize that right now the space that I'm in is different than where I have been in times past. Yeah. And so talking about some things that they are comfortable with doing, like I said, those baby steps. Maybe it's not going out to get the tree, but maybe it's sitting and writing your thoughts. You know, maybe right now you just want to journal where you're at. Maybe it's once that tree gets in the house, you don't mind maybe sitting and decorating, you know, but just being mindful that if a person does have a shift in their behaviors, that it's important for you to let them know that you do know and that you care, and that you're willing to do what's necessary to get them back on track. If it's for a duration of time and you notice it's beyond the holiday season, talking to them about seeking additional help and support. You know, there's a lot of support groups, there are professional counselors. You know, we kind of shy away from counseling, You know, most people, you know, it's like, oh, I don't know what. And so just doing a routine checkup and eval like you would do your physical health, it's always good that if someone is looking different and acting different than where they usually are for a long period of time, and it's causing distress on their activities and things that they would usually do, it would be really supportive to just say, hey, I wouldn't mind going with you. I wouldn't mind making that call with you, just so that they know that there are people who care and that there is another step that we can take that can help you get back to wholeness.
Yeah, that's really powerful. You know, listening and watching. You know, when someone has a shift in their normal behaviors, you know, it's very important that if you are a close friend, someone that's connected to them, to watch. You know what I mean? What are the shifts? You know, are they doing really awkward or weird things? You know what I mean? Because sometimes, you know, depression could be kicking in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Sometimes people like to be in the dark. You know what I mean? Or they're always sleeping, maybe laying down, sleeping too much, you know, or just not having any energy to do anything, or just negative conversation. You know what I mean? I think those pieces are important to, you know, pick up as a friend, you know what I mean? And then, you know, really trying to engage them, you know, as Dr. Keyshawn has already said, you know what I mean, to kind of find out what's going on, because they may need some help, you know what I mean? And sometimes when people are dealing with depression, they don't really realize that they're going that direction, you know, and making sure that, okay, if this is a serious shift that's going on in somebody's life, you know, what can we do to really support them and get them the help that they need? And sometimes you may have to say some things to a family member that they don't want to hear. You know what I mean? Because sometimes family can be really stressful for people. So yeah, sometimes a mommy or a daddy or uncle or aunt may have to say some things that they don't want to hear.
So you guys both said something, and I just kind of want to reiterate it. The one thing is that you both talked about, of course, having those conversations, and you talked about letting friends know, hey, if we need to make a call, or if we need to get you connected with someone because this is like extended behavior. Now it's beyond, the holidays, or I'm noticing, like you said, some trouble getting out of the bed and not wanting to, sometimes even depression can manifest as physical pain. And so, recognizing some of those signs as well, but letting them know that you're willing to make the call with them or do whatever needs to happen with them so that they don't feel alone in that. And I think that's such a powerful, such a small thing, a small adjustment that we can make, but I think it's such a powerful thing because I think oftentimes, especially in the midst of just kind of depressive thoughts, depressive seasons, feeling alone, even if you're surrounded by people feel alone. And so to know, like, don't assume that someone, like, I'm sitting here with you, you ain't alone. Like, don't assume that just because you are physically with someone that they understand that they're not alone, because again, we never know the battles that people are fighting internally. And so they might be sitting there with you watching a movie on the couch, but internally they feel isolated and they feel alone. And so being mindful of that, but then also something that both of you said again, that I think is so important, is not shying away from difficult conversations. And I think oftentimes, I don't know if it's like a fear of damaging the relationship or what it is, but sometimes, especially when it comes to difficult conversations, like you said, we shy away from them when really we need to be pressing into them, because people oftentimes are crying for help in different ways. And unless we have those conversations, we won't really grasp it. One of, and I don't want to get super churchy, but one of my favorite places in scripture is in Genesis, and it is within the canon of Abraham and Sarah and their family and the promise of God, and Hagar, who kind of gets lost in the sauce in there, right? And so Hagar is just kind of thrown into the mix. And then all of a sudden she's treated like crap. Which, let's face it, that's a whole different cultivated conversation, but we create mess and then we play the victim. Oh Lord. But so, the whole mess was created, and then she was treated like trash, but she was like, I just did what you asked me to do. And so there is a point at which she leaves. She runs away because she's being mistreated. And as she is in the wilderness, she's in the middle of the desert, and an angel comes and visits her, and God speaks to her in that moment. And at the end of this conversation, so God tells her to go back, this, that, and the other. And at the end of that conversation is the place where it's just one of my favorite places in scripture. And in one of the translations, it says, and in that moment, Hagar gave God another name, and it was El Roi, and that is the God who sees me. And I love visiting that scripture because I cannot begin to tell you how many times in my life I felt invisible to people, surrounded by people, but I felt invisible. And it is so affirming just to know that you're seen. So her situation hadn't changed. Like, it was still some foolishness back home with Abraham and Sarah on the ranch. The situation hadn't changed, but she was affirmed in knowing that God saw her. And so I find a lot of comfort in that scripture. Oftentimes I'll remind myself, he sees you. And so how, just thinking through, based on just what you guys were sharing, sometimes it's such a little thing, but just to acknowledge people, like you said, don't assume that your strong friends are good. Oh yeah, she always good. No, he always good. It's, but they're not always good. They might mask it well, but when we press into, instead of shying away from these difficult conversations, when we press into those things, then we start to learn, wow, you've been carrying a lot. And all while you're carrying your stuff, you're helping other people carry their stuff, right? Because that's what the strong friends do. And so really recognizing that an expression of love in our friendships and in our family relationships is having difficult conversations. And I think sometimes we think that difficult conversations and love can't coexist, but they have to, right? Because that's the crux of, that's the whole crux of, of Jesus coming down. Like, y'all are not doing right, but you can't get right. So I'm going to send the one that will help bridge the gap, right? And so God makes no two ways about this is sin. Don't do this. If you do, you are sinning, right? He has those difficult conversations with us. Now, we ain't always trying to hear it. Okay. But part of operating in love and operating in loving relationship, right, is having those difficult conversations. And recognizing that true friendships and true relationships, they grow from these things instead of being stilted by them. Thank you guys for tuning in. We hope that you have been able to grab hold of something that will help you to come out on top this holiday season and every holiday season after. We are going to link some resources that you all can take advantage of, even down to, I think there's like text counseling. And so if you're still kind of on the fence about, I don't really know about that counseling thing, you can text and somebody we'll reach back out to you and we'll have some conversation with you. So we're going to link as many resources as we can for you all to get connected and to come out on top, because we want you guys to win. We want you guys to come out victorious. Thank you for joining us for this first iteration of Cultivated Conversations. And we're looking forward to doing this some more. So feel free to shoot us a message either in the comments or whatever, letting us know some things that you want to talk about, some things that you want to hear about, some things that you need help with, you need information about. We want you guys to let us know, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.